All right, let's dive into an idea that pretty much flips the whole concept of assessment on its head. We're going to talk about moving beyond the final grade and turning assessment into a powerful tool for learning itself.
You know that feeling, right? We've all been there. The room is dead silent, you can hear the clock ticking, and there's this immense pressure because everything seems to come down to this one single grade. It feels like a final judgment, the end of the road for that chapter of learning. But what if we could totally reframe that? What if assessment wasn't something that's done to a student, but something a student does for themselves as a way to get better, to see what's next?
And that, right there, is where this idea comes in. Let's break down exactly what we mean by assessment as learning.
So this term was really popularized by a researcher named Lorna Earle. And assessment as learning, we'll call it AAL, is all about developing a student's metacognition. It's a big word, but all it means is thinking about your own thinking. The real shift here, the absolute key, is ownership. This isn't about a teacher grading a paper. This is about a student taking that assessment information and using it to actively steer their own learning ship.
To really get this, you got to see where it fits in the big picture. You have assessment of learning. That's your classic final exam. It's a judgment, and it's owned by the teacher or the school. Then there's assessment for learning. That's when a teacher uses a quick quiz to figure out if they need to reteach something, still owned by the teacher. But look at assessment as learning. The purpose is totally different. It's about building self-regulation. And who owns it? The student. That's the game changer.
So this is basically what's going on inside a student's head when AOL is working. It's not a one-time thing. It's this active, constant conversation they're having with themselves. They're pinpointing what they know, what's still fuzzy, and most importantly, they're making a plan for what to do about it.
Okay, so that's the what. But why is this approach such a powerhouse in subjects like math and science? Let's get into that.
Think about a typical math test. A lot of the time, the focus is just on that final answer. Did you get it right? Yes or no? But in STEM, getting the right answer is only half the battle, isn't it? The real learning, the deep understanding, is in the how and the why. ALL shifts the entire goal from just being right to truly understanding the process. And that is absolutely essential for tackling complex problems. And here's the really big takeaway. This isn't just about getting better grades. It's about building skills that last a lifetime. You're teaching students how to be independent learners, how to set their own goals, how to judge their own work against a clear standard, and maybe most importantly, how to figure out a new strategy when they get stuck. You're building resilient, adaptable people.
Okay, so the theory is great, but what does this actually look like when the bell rings? Let's start with a math classroom.
One of my absolute favorite strategies is something called error analysis. So instead of the classic red X of doom from the teacher, the students themselves investigate what went wrong. They literally become detectives, sifting through the evidence of a mistake to uncover the flawed thinking behind it.
The process is super simple, but really powerful. You give a student an incorrect solution, and it's not their own, which keeps the stakes low. First, they have to find the mistake. Then, they have to explain why it's a mistake. After that, they solve it correctly. But that last step, that's where the magic happens. They have to reflect and ask themselves, wait, is this a mistake I make too?
All right, another game changer is using rubrics for self-assessment. Because when students know exactly what good is supposed to look like, when you pull back the curtain and make the success criteria totally transparent, it empowers them to evaluate their own work in a meaningful way. And again, the point here isn't for the student to give themselves an A or a B. It's a structured way to reflect. They look at the rubric, find what they did well, and spot where they can improve. And then, this is the most important part, they create a concrete, actionable plan. Here's my next step. It turns assessment from a judgment into a roadmap.
Now, let's switch gears. How do these same principles play out in a science class?
I love this one because it's so simple, you can start doing it tomorrow. Before you even start an experiment, just have students write down their prediction and then rate how confident they are in it on a scale of 1 to 5. Right away, you're forcing them to think about their own thinking. Why do they believe what they believe?
And you can see how this plugs right into the scientific process. They make their prediction, they do the experiment, then they have to go back to that original prediction and confidence rating. The real learning moment, the aha moment, is when they have to explain how and why the evidence they collected changed their mind. It makes learning visible. And just like in the math classroom, getting students in on the rulemaking is huge.
When the class works together to define what a good scientific explanation actually includes, using evidence, linking cause and effect, they take ownership of those standards. They're not just following rules, they're upholding their own standards.
Okay, so all of these strategies sound great, right? But they don't just happen in a vacuum. You have to create the right kind of environment for assessment as learning to really take root and grow.
The teacher's role really shifts here. You become less of a judge and more of a coach or a facilitator. That means designing activities where you can actually see how students are thinking. It means building a classroom culture where making a mistake is seen as normal. In fact, it's a necessary part of learning. And it means using all this student reflection not as an endpoint, but as the starting point for a real conversation.
Now, it's really important to be clear about this. This is not about getting rid of grades or final exams. AAL doesn't replace other assessments, it complements them. Think of it this way. A test score is a black and white photo of learning. A student's self-reflections and error analyses, that's the rich, full-color video showing the entire journey.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. If we truly empower students to not just be participants in their education, but to be the chief analysts of their own learning, just imagine what becomes possible. What kind of thinkers and problem solvers could we help create then?